Hi everyone and welcome to my tutorial. Today we are crocheting this super cute mini crossbody bag. It has the perfect size for your phone, wallet and essentials, and it's ideal for those times when you want to travel light. So let's get started. Let's quickly go over the materials you'll need. First, around 100 meters of 7.9mm thickness t-shirt yarn. A crochet hook around 6 to 6.5 millimeters. I will use 6.5 for a fluffy look. Then a large eye needle for sewing things together and some stitch markers. Then you'll need a bag lock. Mine is triangle shaped, but you can choose any shape you like. Then 2 metal rings and a bag chain. Mine is 120 centimeter long. So we'll start by crocheting the oval base of our bag. First, make a slip knot. Then work 7 chain stitches. So wrap the yarn around your hook and then pull it through your loop on the crochet. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So here is our foundation chain. So we will skip this first chain stitch and we will consider only the next 6. The first from this 6 and the last from this 6 will be our edge stitches and we will work our increases there. In the first row we insert the hook under the back loop and the back bump of each stitch. Work a single crochet in your first stitch. So wrap the yarn around the hook, pull a loop, then yarn over and pull the yarn through these 2 loops on your hook. Then place a stitch marker to mark the first stitch of your row. Now continue with 4 single crochet in the next 4 stitches, inserting the hook under the back loop and the back bump. Like this, then wrap the yarn, pull a loop, yarn over, and pull the yarn through the 2 loops. The second single crochet. The third one. And the fourth one. In the last stitch, we will work 3 single crochet in the same stitch. This will help us to form the rounded shape. So insert your hook also under the 2 strands, so the back loop and the back bump. Then pull a loop and make your first single crochet. Put a stitch marker on this first single crochet. Then add the second single crochet to the same stitch. Keep this yarn tail close to your work to hide it inside your stitches. And now add the third single crochet to the same stitch. Don't forget this tail we hide inside our pattern. Now place a stitch marker on this third stitch. The stitch markers here indicates the beginning and the end of our edge stitches. Now continue with 4 single crochet in next 4 stitches, inserting the hook in the same stitches as on the opposite side. Like this. 2, 3, and 4. Now you can cut this tail of yarn. And we have one stitch left. This stitch is our second edge stitch, and we need to have 3 single crochet inside in order to create the rounded shape. But if you remember, here we already did 1 single crochet at the very beginning of the row. So in order to have 3 like on the other side, we need to add only 2 single crochet to this stitch. On the first single crochet and the second single crochet into the same stitch. Now we need to close this row. To close the row, make the loop on your hook larger. For this, pull the loop like this. Then insert your hook under the first stitch of the row from the back side, like this. Then wrap the loop and pull it through, like this. Then release your hook and insert it into your last stitch. Pay attention, we do not insert the hook under the stitch, like this. Instead, we insert it into the stitch between the 2 strands. Here is how it looks from the back. Now put your loop on the hook and make a single crochet by grabbing the yarn and pulling it through the wrapped loop and the stitch, like this. Then yarn over and make a single crochet, like this. So your row is closed and we already have also our first stitch of the second row. In this row, we'll crochet an increase in each of the edge stitches and a single crochet in between. An increase is basically 2 single crochet worked in the same stitch. But before continuing, place a stitch marker on the first of the 3 single crochet of this edge stitch. So on this one. So since this is one of our edge stitches, we need to add a single crochet to have here an increase. Now place a stitch marker on this stitch. Now we need to make an increase in the next stitch. What is important from now on is to loop not under the stitches, but insert the hook right inside the stitch between the 2 main strands. This will help shape the base nicely, like this. So here we have an increase, so 2 single crochet in the same stitch. This is one, and we add the second. Next we have our 4 base stitches where we work single crochet. Now when you reached your stitch marker, we will work 3 increases in your next 3 stitches. So insert your hook inside the stitch, then make your first single crochet, place a stitch marker on it to mark the beginning of your edge stitches. Then don't forget to add the second single crochet to have your increase. Then work 2 single crochet together in the next stitch. One and the second. And one more increase in the third stitch. Now place a stitch marker to mark the end of your edge stitches. Now work 4 single crochet until you reach the stitch marker. So we have 1 stitch left and is one of our edge stitches. So take off your marker and work there and increase. So we insert the hook inside the stitch. Make your first single crochet. Put a stitch marker to mark again the beginning of your edge stitches. And then don't forget to add the second single crochet to the same stitch, like this. Now close the row as we did for the previous row. So make your loop bigger, then insert the hook from the back into your first stitch, pull the loop through, then insert your hook inside the last stitch, put the loop on your hook and make a single crochet. Like this. Now we'll start row 3. In the third row, we will alternate between making an increase and a single crochet in the edge stitches. So we will have here an increase, here a single crochet, then an increase, a single crochet, an increase, a single crochet. Since this is the second stitch from the edge, we leave here 1 single crochet and we work an increase in the next stitch. Don't forget, we place a stitch marker on the first stitch of our row. And add the second single crochet to the same stitch to have an increase. Now in the next stitch we need to do 1 single crochet, then again you need to make an increase and then a single crochet. This is our increase. And now a single crochet in the next one. Continue with 4 single crochet until you reach the stitch marker. So we reached our 6 edge stitches, and we will alternate here between 1 increase and 1 single crochet. We will start with an increase. Then we make 1 single crochet. Again, an increase. Then 1 single crochet. And again, an increase. And 1 single crochet in the last stitch. So in this row we haven't placed any stitch markers because this is our last row and we don't need them. Now continue with the 4 single crochet until you reach the stitch marker. So we have 1 stitch left. In this stitch we will work an increase. Since here we have an increase, 1 single crochet, an increase, 1 single crochet. So since this is our last row, we will close it differently. Leave a short tail of yarn and then cut it. Then pull this yarn out. Now get the stitch marker off and insert your hook under this first stitch from the back side. Now grab the yarn and pull it through. Then turn and insert your hook under the back bump and the back loop of the last stitch. Then grab the yarn and pull it through. Like this, we have our last stitch created. And now we need to weave in this end. So our oval base is almost ready. This is our right side that will be outside your bag. But we still have these holes that are not really nice. So we will crochet a chain of slip stitches here to close these holes. So now take your hook and insert it in 1 stitch above the hole at the base of row 2. like this. Then take the yarn and place it at the back of your base. Then wrap the yarn around the hook and pull it through the stitch. Like this, but make it shorter, so just pull this free yarn from the back side. Then insert your hook into the next stitch where the hole is. Wrap again your yarn from the back and pull it through the stitch and then through the loop on your hook. So this is your first slip stitch. Now insert the hook between the next stitches. Again, wrap the yarn and pull it through the stitch and the loop to make your second slip stitch. Now in the next stitch we do exactly the same thing. And we continue this process until you reach the stitch following the next hole. So this is the stitch where the hole is. Here we make a slip stitch and our last slip stitch should be in the next stitch. Now just cut the yarn and pull it out. Use a large eye needle to pass the yarn to the back side of your base. So you can insert in the same stitch where you did your last slip stitch. Like this. Now turn and wave in the ends. And that's it. Now you've created the oval base for your bag. Before proceeding to crochet the walls, iron this base to give it a flat shape. When ironing, place a cloth between your iron and the crochet base to protect it. So this is your oval base with the right side that should stay on the exterior. So turn it over and let's proceed with crocheting the walls. Start with any stitch on your base. It doesn't matter which one. Insert your hook into your desired stitch under the back loop and the back bump. Then take your yarn, wrap it around the hook and pull a loop. Then make a single crochet. Now starting with the next stitch we will work a rattan stitch. A rattan stitch is a complex stitch done in several steps. So first to work a rattan stitch, insert a hook under the next stitch back loop and back bump. Now stick this tip to your base to hide it inside your pattern, then pull a loop up to the level of your loop on the hook. Also, it's very important to pay attention when working this stitch. When you pull your loop, make sure the yarn always faces up if you want to have neat stitches at the end. I'll give you a small tip when I show you the next stitch. Now release your hook and insert it from the opposite direction, first into the second loop, then into the first loop. Then pull the first loop on a hook through the second loop. Now yarn over and make chain 1. So this is our first rattan stitch. Let's work one more together. So insert a hook into the next stitch under the back loop and the back bump. And if it's your first time doing a rattan stitch, here's a helpful tip. Before you pull out your loop, make sure your working yarn is facing down. This way, when you pull the loop, the yarn will face up and you will have nice, neat results. Like this. Then you release your hook, insert it from the opposite direction, first into the second, then into the first, and pull the first through the second. And finish with chain 1. So we need to continue working rattan stitches all around your oval base, inserting your hook under the back loop and the back bump, then pulling up your loop, taking off your hook, inserting from the opposite direction, pulling the first loop through the second, and finishing with chain 1. Continue with another rattan stitch, so insert under the back loop, back bump. See how my yarn looks down, but when I pull the loop, it looks up. Then I release my hook and I pull the first loop through the second, always finishing with chain 1. So continue working a rattan stitch until you reach the single crochet you made at the beginning of the row. In total, you'll have 26 rattan stitches. So we've got to the single crochet we worked at the beginning of the row. Now add your last rattan stitch in that stitch. So here I forgot my chain 1. Now just insert a hook at the base of your single crochet, pull a loop, then pull the first loop through the second and make chain 1. So in this pattern we do not close our rows, we continue crocheting in rounds. So in the next row we will work 26 rattan stitches. To make your first rattan stitch, insert your hook between the 2 stitches. The same, you pull a loop, then you release your hook and insert a hook from the opposite direction and pull the first loop through the second. Put here a stitch marker on your chain preceding your rattan stitch. This will help you to keep track of the number of rows you've made and know where to make your last stitch. Now don't forget to make chain 1 before starting a new rattan stitch. I always do, but really try not. Then make the next rattan stitch in the next space between the stitches. So when you insert your hook between these two stitches, you'll see on the other side how your hook is between these two strands of yarn. So you see, this is what happens if your yarn doesn't face down when you grab it to pull the loop. So we need to remake it. Continue working rattan stitches until you get to your stitch marker. So we've got to our stitch marker. This is the last stitch of this row and the beginning of your next row. In fact, we don't close our rows, we continue crocheting in rounds. So work your last rattan stitch in the marked stitch. Then place a stitch marker on the chain preceding the stitch you've made. Since we don't close the rows, it is not very evident the beginning and the end of your row, so we use this stitch marker as an indicator. So now we start row 3. In row 3 and in all the other rows, we work all around your base, working in each space between the stitches a rattan stitch. Now continue working by yourself, so you need to work rattan stitches until the end of the row. When you reach your stitch marker, you make one last rattan stitch inside and then you place a stitch marker on the chain preceding this rattan stitch. When you do your last rattan stitch, you can count as one row finished. Now we work on row 3, but when you complete, you need to have 9 rows in total. So here I worked 9 rows. I need to do one last rattan stitch inside the stitch where the stitch marker is placed. So here. As always, I forgot my chain 1. Now this was our last stitch, so you can now leave a short tail of yarn and then cut the yarn. Now make chain 1 and pull the yarn out. With the help of a large-eyed needle, you need to weave in this end. So now our bag walls are ready and we can proceed to crochet the flap. Now let's crochet the bag's flap. Take a stitch marker and place it on our last rattan stitch. So if you look, here is where we worked our last rattan stitch. So we'll place the stitch marker on the first chain. Starting with this point, count 10 chain stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you can place another stitch marker here, but not for too long. So this is where our back flap will be situated. Now take your hook and insert it under the marked stitch on the right. Then take your yarn and make 11 chain stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Now turn a little bit your bag and we start our first row. So in this row we will crochet in the back bumps 9 slip stitches. So skip the first back bump, then insert into the second, pull a loop and pull this loop through the loop on your hook. Continue with another 8 slip stitches. And the last one. So we finished our first row. Now we need to connect this row to the wall. We will connect it through a slip stitch. For this, insert a hook into the next rattan stitch on the wall, so here. Then keep this yarn tail close to your work to hide it inside your stitches. Then pull the working yarn through the stitch on the wall and through the loop on the hook. Then make chain 1. So you had 1 connection stitch and chain 1 to start the second row. In the second row, we will work 9 slip stitches in back loop only. So insert your hook into your first back loop and make a slip stitch. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. At the end of the row, we need to make chain 1 and then turn. So we finished our second row and we start our third row. In the third row, we will also work 9 slip stitches in back loop only. And the last one. Now we need again to connect this row with the wall with a slip stitch. So insert a hook inside the next chain stitch between this 2 rattan stitches. Then pull the yarn through your wall and then through your loop on the hook. And make chain 1 to start the row 4. From now on, you will crochet 9 slip stitches in back loop only in every row. So let's do 2 more together. So there are rows that will finish at the extremity of the flap, like this one. In this row, you will make your 9 slip stitches in back loop only. And at the end of this kind of rows, we make chain 1 and then we turn. On the other side, there are rows that end next to the wall, like this one. Here we work again 9 slip stitches in back loop only. But at the end, you make 1 more slip stitch to connect to the wall, so between the 2 rattan stitches on the wall. And after that, you make chain 1 to start the next row. And we finished 5 rows. So continue working by yourself until you reach your stitch marker. In each row you need to have 9 slip stitches in back loop only. So here I finished my 15th row and now I reached the stitch marker. Connect it now to the wall with a slip stitch, like we did for the previous rows. And make chain 1, so we'll actually crochet 2 more rows. So here I finish my 17th row. Now leave a short tail of yarn and then cut it. Then pull this yarn out and use your large eye needle to weave in the end. First insert your needle into your last connection stitch to the wall. Like this, and then hide it in your wall. So your flap is almost ready. Now we need to crochet some sides to make it a little bit larger. For this, insert a hook under the back loop of the first stitch on the loop. So this one here. Now pull the yarn through and make 1 single crochet. Continue crocheting 8 more single crochet in back loop only until you reach the edge of your flap. So this is the last one. We have here on this side 9 single crochet. Now make 1 chain stitch to mark the edge and then we will crochet on this side. So chain 1. Now insert your hook under your first and second row. So here. And make 1 single crochet. Continue working a single crochet in each space between the rows. In total you have 9 single crochet here. This is the second, then the third here, four, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now make 1 more chain stitch at the edge. Then make 9 single crochet in back loop only on the second side of the flap. Now we will crochet 10 slip stitches on the back side of the bag. For this, insert your hook into your first connection stitch on the wall. Pull the yarn through this stitch on the wall and through the loop on your hook. Then insert it into the second connection stitch on the wall. Grab the yarn and pull it out through this stitch and the loop on your hook. Continue by working a slip stitch in every connection stitch. So here we have our last connection stitch and it's the 10th slip stitch. Now we want to connect these two sides. For this, leave a short tail of yarn, then cut it. Now pull this yarn out, then insert your yarn into a needle and insert this needle under the first stitch of the flap like this. And then inside the last stitch on the back and pull the yarn through and and you have one nice stitch. Now just wave in the end. And your bag body is ready. So now let's secure the bag lock. Install the lock mechanism in the middle of the flap. Secure it well and check if you are satisfied with its position. Now let's fix the bag lock base. For the lock base, if the attachment legs are enough long, you can install it directly on your walls. However, if they are short like mine, here's a useful tip. Cut some yarn chips of about 10 centimeter long for each leg. So for example, if I have 4 attachment legs, I need 4 tips of yarn of about 10 centimeter, maybe a little bit longer. Now you need to fix every yarn tip with your attachment legs. Secure them well. This is very important to ensure a strong and stable hold. Now take your lock base and decide where you will fix it. Then with the help of a smaller hook or a larger needle, you have to pull all of these tips of yarn inside the bag. So let's check one more time the position. And now insert your needle into your bag walls. And the second tip of the same attachment leg. Now I make a knot to fix it. And before continuing with the other tips of yarn, you need to check if you are satisfied with your lock position. Now continue pulling all these tips of yarn inside the bag and secure them with a knot. After each knot, check your bag lock position, because sometimes when you fasten off your knots, your bag lock position can change a little bit and it might look awkward when you want to close it. So check at every step if your bag lock position is satisfying. So here I finished my 4 knots. Now I'll check one more time if I'm satisfied with my bag lock position. So my bag lock closed easily. I think it's fine like that. Now we have one more step to complete, is to wave in all these ends. So I finished waving in the ends. We see a little bit our knots, but not too much. Now that we finished fixing our bag lock, we can pursue by crocheting the handle. So to crochet our handle, we will start with 15 chain stitches. You don't make a slip knot, you start with the first chain stitch. 2, So I've made 15 chain stitches. Now in the first row we will work 14 slip stitches in back bumps. So skip the first back bump and insert your hook directly into the second. Then make your first slip stitch. Now continue with 13 more slip stitches. And the last one. And we are done with the first row. In the second row we will work 13 reverse single crochet. A reverse single crochet is a variation of the single crochet you know, but worked in reverse. This means that in reverse single crochet you insert your hook into the stitch to the right and not to the left, and you create your single crochet there. So take your hook and insert in your previous stitch, so your stitch to the right. Then grab the yarn and pull it through this stitch. Make sure your yarn faces up to have neat results. Then take your working yarn and make yarn over and pull it through the 2 loops on your hook. So this is your first reverse single crochet. Now again insert into the next one. Grab the yarn like this, face up, yarn over and pull it through the 2 loops. This is our second reverse single crochet. Continue until you get to the end of your row. So insert your hook into the next one. Pull a loop, then single crochet. So I've worked 12 reverse single crochet and I have one left here. And I finished my second and my last row. Now all you have to do is to leave a short tip of yarn, then cut it and pull it out. So this is the first piece of our handle. We need to make one more identical piece and then to connect them to have our handle done. So our 2 pieces are ready. Now we need to connect them by sewing. So this part will be inside and this part outside. So they should be aligned like this. Now take 1 meter of yarn and insert it into the large-eyed needle. And we start connecting these two pieces. So first insert your needle from the back side into the first stitch, like this, and at the same time into the first stitch on the front side. Then pull the yarn through, leaving a short tail of yarn on the back side, like this. Now we start moving to the left. Insert your needle into the second stitch from the front side and into the second stitch from the back side, and pull the yarn through. If you look at your front side, here you'll have your first connection. So your first and the second stitch are connected. However, if you look from the back side, your first and second stitch is not yet connected, so we need to go back into our first stitch. From the back side, but also from the front side. We will always connect back side and front side into the same stitches. So we've got back to the first stitch. And we have our first connection on the back side. So here we already have one connection, but we need to move left. And since we can move left only with one stitch, we need to make one more connection here into the second stitch. You'll have a double connection on this side. Now, here we have already our first connection. We need to do our second connection on the back side. So we insert the needle into the third stitch. And on the front side, we are also inserting the needle into the third stitch. If you look back, here we have our second connection. And we need also to do a second connection here. So we need to go back to our second stitch. This. Here we have the connection between the second and the third stitch. On the back side, we already have one connection, but since we need to move left, we will remake this connection. So basically the idea is that we need to connect each stitch of the first side with each stitch of the second side. In the same time, we need to move to the left without skipping our stitches, so we can move only by one stitch at a time. This is why sometimes we need to go back to create our connections, and sometimes we need to double our connection in order to make the connection on the other side, like now. So we move again one stitch to the left on the front side, one stitch to the left on the back side. Then we look at the back side and we see that here we already have one connection, so we need to move left. One to the left on the back side, one to the left on the right side. Here we don't have our connection, so we need to move right and into the same stitch on the back side. Here we already have our connection, but we still need to move left. Here we already have it, so we move left. Here on the right we miss our connection, so we need to remake it. Here we double our connection, since we already have one on the right and we need to move left. Here we have our connection on the right, so we need to move left. Here we don't have one, so we move right. Here we move left, even if this means to double our connection. Here we need to go to the left. Now here we need to go back. Here again we double our connection. On the back side we will move left, since we already have one connection to the right. And we continue like this until we connect all the stitches. So I'm almost at the end. Here we'll work our last connection on the back side. And the last connection on the front side. Now we double the last connection on the back side. And we finished our sewings. Now we need to wave in all these ends. When waving in these ends, I have a small tip for you. Hide the remaining yarn tips by threading the tips from the back piece into the front piece, and those from the front piece into the back piece. This will strengthen the connection between the two pieces. For example, this tip of yarn comes from the front side, so I want to hide it into the back side in order to have a stronger connection. Like this. Now just wave in. Now we take another tip of yarn, for example this one. And we will first insert it in one stitch from the opposite side, like this. And then we will just wave in. If you do this for all your left tails, your ends will be also connected. So continue waving in by first passing the tail into the opposite side of the handle and then weaving in. So this is my last left yarn. I pass it first into the opposite side and then I just weave in all over my work. So now our handle is ready. Next we need to attach our O-ring clips to both ends. So actually we insert it into the first stitch on the front side and first stitch on the back side. Like this. And same thing on the other side. Next we need to attach the handle to the flap. So let's now fix our O-rings on our flap. I like to fix it between the second and the third single crochet. And same on the other side. And now your bag is ready. You just need now to add your chain and we are done. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you for watching.